My name is Myra Whitmore. I'm 34 years old, a cardiology resident, and a single mother of 3-year-old twins. 2 months ago, I was lying in an emergency room, bleeding internally after a car accident. My hands were shaking as I dialed my parents' number. I needed someone, anyone, to watch Lily and Lucas for just a few hours while doctors tried to save my life. What I got instead was a text message in our family group chat that read, "You've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets with Vanessa tonight. Figure it out yourself." So I did. From my hospital bed, I called a nanny service, paid triple the rate, and made a decision that would change everything. I cut them off. Completely. The monthly mortgage payments, the health insurance, the car repairs. Everything I'd been quietly paying for the past 8 years, gone. 2 weeks later, there was a knock on my door. Before I tell you who was standing there and what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love connecting with you all. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in the Carver household, I learned early that love came with a ranking system. My older sister Vanessa was the star, always had been. She was 3 years older, effortlessly beautiful, and had this magnetic quality that made our parents light up whenever she walked into a room. When she announced she wanted to pursue fashion design, Mom cried happy tears. Dad called her our little visionary. When I said I wanted to become a doctor, Dad nodded. That's practical. That was it. Practical. I told myself it didn't matter. I buried myself in textbooks, aced every exam, and clawed my way into one of the top medical schools in the country. 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, specializing in cardiology. The day I graduated from medical school should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. My parents arrived 2 hours late. "Sorry, sweetheart," Mom said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Vanessa had an emergency meeting with a potential investor. We had to drop her off first." No flowers, no celebration dinner, just a quick photo in the parking lot before they rushed off because Vanessa needed emotional support after her meeting. Compare that to Vanessa's first fashion show 3 years earlier. The whole family flew to New York, 5-star hotel, front row seats. Dad posted 17 photos on Facebook with captions like, "So proud of our talented girl." I got a parking lot photo and a lukewarm "Congrats, honey." I told myself it made sense. Fashion is competitive. Vanessa needed more support. Medicine is stable. I could handle things on my own. But what I didn't know then was that my parents' favoritism wasn't just emotional. It was financial. And I was the one footing the bill. It started 8 years ago, right after I finished medical school. Dad called me one evening, his voice tight with embarrassment. "Myra, we're in a bit of a bind. The mortgage payment is due, and things are tight this month. Could you help us out? Just this once?" Just this once. I transferred $2,400 that night without hesitation. They were my parents. Of course I would help. But just this once became every month. The mortgage, then their health insurance premiums, $800 monthly, when Dad's company dropped their coverage, then the emergencies, the car repairs, the roof leak, the new furnace. I never said no, not once. When I got pregnant with the twins and their father walked out during my 5th month, I called my parents from the hospital after a scary bleeding episode. I was terrified, alone, desperate for support. "Oh, honey, we wish we could come," Mom said, "but Vanessa is so stressed after her show in Milan. She really needs us right now." They didn't come. Not for the birth. Not for the first month when I was barely sleeping, nursing 2 newborns while studying for my board exams. But the automatic transfers kept going out. $2,400 for the mortgage, $800 for insurance, whatever else they needed. I kept a spreadsheet. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me needed to see it in black and white. The numbers were staggering. 8 years, $320,000. Give or take. I never asked for gratitude. I never expected a parade. But I also never expected to be called a burden by the people I'd been carrying for almost a decade. That reckoning was coming. I just didn't know it yet. The accident happened on a Tuesday evening. I was driving home after a 16-hour shift. My eyes were heavy, but I was alert enough. The light turned green. I pulled into the intersection. I never saw the truck. It ran the red light doing 50. The impact hit my driver's side door. Glass exploded. Metal screamed. The world spun, then went black. I woke up in an ambulance, pain searing through my abdomen. A familiar face hovered above me. Myra? Myra, can you hear me? Can you tell? Marcus Smith, emergency physician at my hospital. We'd worked together for 2 years. Marcus? My voice came out wrong, weak. What's happening? You were in an accident. We're taking you in now. Possible internal bleeding. You're going to need surgery. Surgery. The word hit me like a second collision. My kids. I grabbed his arm. Lily and Lucas. They're with the babysitter. She leaves at 8. Marcus checked his watch. It's 7:15. 45 minutes. I had 45 minutes to find someone to watch my children while doctors cut me open. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands. Blood smeared across the screen as I pulled up my parents' number. It rang 4 times. Myra? Dad's voice was impatient. We're about to leave. What is it? Dad, I need help. The words tumbled out between gasps of pain. I was in an accident. I'm being taken to the hospital. Surgery. Please, I need you and Mom to watch the twins, just for a few hours. Silence on the line. Then, hold on. I heard muffled voices. My mother's tone, sharp and annoyed. Vanessa's laugh in the background. The line went quiet. Then my phone buzzed with a text notification. Family group chat. The message was from my mother. Myra, you've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets with Vanessa tonight. We've been planning this for months. Figure it out yourself. I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. A second message appeared. From Dad. You're a doctor. You're used to hospitals. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. Then Vanessa. Not words. Just a laughing emoji. That was it. That was all I was worth to them. A laughing emoji while I lay bleeding in an ambulance. Marcus was watching me. I didn't realize he could see my screen until he spoke. Myra. His voice was careful. What did they say? I couldn't answer. Something had cracked open inside me, and it wasn't just the internal bleeding. I need a phone, I whispered. A phone with internet. Mine's dying. He handed me his without question. I Googled emergency nanny services, found one with 24-hour availability, called, explained the situation in clipped professional sentences. Yes, I would pay triple the rate. Yes, I would provide the babysitter's contact for handoff instructions. Yes, I authorized payment immediately. It was done in 4 minutes. Marcus was still watching me when I handed back his phone. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Can you screenshot those messages? I asked. From my phone, before it dies. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I can do that. I closed my eyes as the ambulance pulled into the hospital bay. The pain was overwhelming now, but it wasn't coming from my abdomen anymore. From that hospital bed, with an IV in my arm and fear in my heart, I made the easiest decision of my life. The surgery took 4 hours. Ruptured spleen. Internal bleeding. Another few minutes and I might not have made it. I spent 5 days in the hospital. 5 days of IV drips, morphine haze, and nurses checking my vitals every few hours. Not one call from my parents. Not one text. Not one visit. The emergency nanny service was expensive, but worth every penny. They coordinated with my regular sitter, kept Lily and Lucas safe and fed, sent me daily photo updates. Strangers took better care of my situation than my own family. On day 3, I asked the nurse for my laptop. Are you sure you're up for it? She asked. You should be resting. I need to take care of something. My hands were steady as I logged into my banking app. 8 years of automatic transfers stared back at me. Regular as clockwork. $2,400 on the 1st of every month, $800 on the 15th. I canceled them all. Then I opened my phone settings, blocked my father's number, my mother's, Vanessa's. There was no dramatic moment, no tears, no second guessing. It felt like setting down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. Marcus stopped by later that afternoon. He'd checked on me every day, bringing coffee and quiet company. "How are you feeling?" he asked. I looked up at him, and for the first time in years, I told the truth. Better. For the first time in 8 years, I actually feel better. He didn't push for details, he just nodded, like he understood. I knew the fallout was coming. My parents would notice the missing money. They would rage and cry and demand explanations. But I didn't expect what came next. 2 weeks after my surgery, I was finally home, moving slowly, still sore, but alive. It was a Saturday morning. I was making pancakes for Lily and Lucas, their favorite weekend treat. The kitchen smelled like butter and maple syrup. Lucas was trying to stack his toy blocks. Lily was helping by knocking them down. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on my front door. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, my heart rate spiking. If it was my parents, I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready. I looked through the peephole, and my breath caught. Standing on my doorstep was a tall man in his 70s. Silver hair, neatly combed, sharp blue eyes that I remembered from childhood. A posture that still carried the authority of 40 years on the federal bench. Grandpa Thomas. I hadn't seen him in almost 3 years. My parents always had excuses for why we couldn't visit. Too busy, too far, too inconvenient. I opened the door, and he pulled me into a hug so tight it made my surgical incision ache. "Myra." His voice was rough. "Let me look at you." He pulled back, his eyes scanning my face, then dropping to where my hand rested protectively over my abdomen. "I know everything," he said quietly. "Eleanor told me." Aunt Eleanor, my mother's younger sister, the only person in the family who'd ever openly questioned how my parents treated me. "Grandpa, Don't." He held up a hand. "You don't need to explain anything. But I do need you to come somewhere with me." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Cream-colored, elegant, formal. An invitation. "My 70th birthday party, next Saturday. The whole family will be there." His eyes met mine, and I have some things that need to be said. Grandpa Thomas sat at my kitchen table, watching Lily and Lucas with a soft smile. They'd taken to him immediately, showing off their toys, demanding his attention. He gave it freely. "They look just like you did at that age," he said, same stubborn chin. I set down 2 cups of coffee and took the seat across from him. "Grandpa, how did you find out? About the accident? About everything?" "Eleanor called me the night it happened." He wrapped his hands around the mug. "She'd heard through one of your cousins, when she told me what your parents did." He stopped, jaw tightening. "I've watched this for years, Myra. The way Helen and Richard treat you versus Vanessa. I'm old, but I'm not blind." I stared at my coffee. I thought maybe I was imagining it, making it bigger than it was. "You weren't." His voice carried the weight of a man who'd spent decades separating truth from lies. "I was a federal judge for 40 years. I know how to read people. I know what favoritism looks like, what exploitation looks like." He leaned forward. "Tell me something. Do you still have records of the money you've sent them?" I nodded slowly. "Every transfer, 8 years." "Good." He sat back. "I want you to put together a summary. Every payment, every date, every amount." "Why?" "Because at my birthday party, in front of the entire family, I intend for the truth to come out." His eyes were steel. "Not as an attack, not as revenge, simply as facts. And facts, as I learned in 40 years on the bench, have a way of speaking for themselves. My hands trembled around my mug. What if they hate me? The ones who matter won't. He reached across and squeezed my hand. And the ones who do never deserved you. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. I printed every bank statement, every transfer confirmation, 8 years of financial records, organized chronologically, bound in a plain manila folder. Looking at it all together was staggering. Month after month, year after year, a river of money flowing one direction. Aunt Eleanor came over 3 days before the party. She was 55, sharp-tongued, and had always been the black sheep of the family for refusing to pretend everything was fine. She flipped through the folder, her expression darkening with each page. $360,000, she said flatly. Myra, do you understand what this is? I know. This is more than most people make in 7 years of full-time work. She set down the folder. And they called you a burden. I pressed my palms against the kitchen counter. I don't want to destroy the family, Aunt Eleanor. I just want them to see, to acknowledge what I've done. You're not destroying anything. She stood and put her hand on my shoulder. You're just stopping the lie. They built their comfortable life on your silence. You're not obligated to keep giving them that. I nodded, though my stomach churned with anxiety. What if everyone takes their side? Some might. Family is complicated. She shrugged. But your grandfather has a lot of influence, and more importantly, you have the truth. That evening, I got a text from a cousin I barely spoke to. Heard you and your parents had a falling out. Vanessa's been telling everyone you've been acting erratic since your accident. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I stared at the message. They were already spinning the narrative, painting me as unstable, preparing their defense before I even arrived. I hadn't wanted a fight, but it seemed they were bringing one anyway. Grandpa Thomas's house was a colonial estate on 3 acres of manicured land. White columns, wraparound porch, the kind of place that whispered old money and quiet authority. I pulled into the circular driveway, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Lily and Lucas were in their car seats, chattering about the big house and the balloons they could see through the windows. More than 40 cars lined the property. The whole family was here. I wore a simple navy dress, professional, understated. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to tell the truth. The folder was in my bag. Inside, the party was already in full swing. Waiters circulated with champagne. A string quartet played in the corner. Crystal and silver glinted under the chandelier light. I spotted them immediately. My parents stood near the fireplace. Dad in his best suit, looking distinguished. Mom in a cream-colored dress, laughing at something someone said. They saw me at the same moment. Mom's laugh died. Dad's face went rigid. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then Vanessa appeared. My sister glided over in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment. Her smile was perfect. Her eyes were ice. Oh, Myra. She air-kissed my cheek. You made it. We heard about your accident. Nothing too serious, I hope? I met her gaze steadily. A ruptured spleen and internal bleeding. I almost died. Her smile flickered. Mom said it was just a fender bender. Mom wasn't there. I shifted Lucas to my other hip. None of you were. Vanessa's composure cracked for just a second. Then she recovered, patting my arm with false sympathy. Well, you look fine now. That's what matters. She drifted away, but I felt the first rumble of thunder. This was only the beginning. The attack came 30 minutes into the party. I was getting fruit punch for the twins when I heard Vanessa's voice, deliberately loud, carrying across the room. I'm so worried about Myra, honestly. She was talking to a cluster of aunts and cousins near the dessert table. The accident really affected her. She's been saying the strangest things. Cut off all contact with Mom and Dad for no reason. I kept my back turned, but every word landed like a small knife. Mom joined in, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. We've tried everything. Calls, texts. She won't respond. I think she's having some kind of breakdown. Poor thing, someone murmured. She's always been the sensitive one, Vanessa added. Remember how dramatic she was as a teenager? I think the stress of being a single mom has just been too much. I felt eyes on me, pitying looks, whispered concerns. I said nothing, just handed Lucas his juice cup and smoothed Lily's hair. Aunt Eleanor appeared at my side, her voice low and furious. They've been laying groundwork all week, calling relatives, planting seeds. They know something's coming, and they're trying to discredit you first. I know. Are you okay? I looked across the room at my grandfather. He was watching the scene with an unreadable expression, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He gave me the smallest nod. I'm fine, I told Eleanor. Let them talk. The room quieted suddenly. Someone clinked a glass. Grandpa Thomas rose from his chair. At 70, he still commanded attention like the courtroom judge he'd been for 4 decades. Every eye in the room turned to him. Before we continue with the festivities, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly, I have a few things I'd like to say. The air changed. This was it. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. Before Grandpa reveals what he knows, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to rewrite the truth about you? Where they painted you as the crazy one just because you finally stood up for yourself? Drop a comment and share your story, or just type truth if you've been there. And if you're enjoying this, please hit that like button. Trust me, what happens next is worth staying for. Now back to the party. Before Grandpa could continue, my father stepped forward. Dad, wait! His voice was controlled, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Before you say anything, there's something the family should know. Grandpa raised an eyebrow. Richard? Dad turned to face the room, every inch the concerned parent. As many of you may have heard, my daughter Myra has been going through a difficult time. He gestured toward me with a sad smile. After her accident, she's been confused, distant. She's cut off contact with her mother and me completely. Mom stepped up beside him, still clutching that handkerchief. We've only ever wanted the best for her, she said, her voice trembling. But she's been spreading terrible lies about us, saying we abandoned her, that we don't love her. The room was silent. I felt 40 pairs of eyes boring into me. We've tried to be patient, Dad continued, but it's been heartbreaking. We gave that girl everything. Everything. Vanessa added her piece from across the room. She's even been claiming we refused to help her during her accident, which is absolutely not true. There must be some kind of misunderstanding. Someone near me let out a sympathetic murmur. The poor things. I stood frozen. Lily had buried her face in my neck, sensing the tension. Myra! An aunt I barely knew approached me. Honey, is everything okay? Your parents are so worried about you. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Then Grandpa Thomas's voice cut through the room like a gavel. Are you finished, Richard? The question was quiet, mild even, but every person in that room heard the steel underneath. Dad's confident expression faltered. I just thought the family should know. The family should know the truth, Grandpa interrupted. And I intend to give it to them. Grandpa Thomas walked to the center of the room. His gait was measured, deliberate. The walk of a man who had presided over hundreds of cases and never once lost control of his courtroom. I've listened to your concerns, Richard, he said. Helen, Vanessa, you've painted a very clear picture of a troubled young woman who's turned against her loving family. He paused, letting the words hang. Now, I'd like to ask some questions. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Dad, I don't think this is the place. This is exactly the place. Grandpa's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. This is family, and families should know the truth about each other. He turned to my father. Richard, a simple question. Who has been paying the mortgage on your house for the past 8 years? The color drained from Dad's face. What? Your mortgage. $2,400 a month. For 8 years. Who's been paying it? We. Dad's eyes darted to Mom. We pay our own mortgage. Do you? Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folder. My folder. Because I have here a complete record of bank transfers from Myra's account to your mortgage company every month for 96 consecutive months. A murmur rippled through the room. That's a misunderstanding, Mom stammered. Myra offered. We never asked. I'm not suggesting you held a gun to her head, Grandpa said calmly. I'm simply establishing facts. He opened the folder. Let me share some numbers with the family. I think they'll find them illuminating. Across the room, Vanessa had gone pale. Dad's hands were clenched at his sides. Mom looked like she might faint. And I stood there, holding my children, my heart pounding as the truth finally began to surface. 8 years, Grandpa Thomas read from the folder. Let's break it down. The room was utterly silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Mortgage payments, $230,400. He looked up. That's the house Richard and Helen live in, the house they claim they pay for themselves. Someone gasped. Health insurance premiums, $76,800. When Richard's company dropped their coverage, Myra picked up the bill. He flipped a page. Car repairs, home maintenance, emergency expenses, approximately $45,000. Another page. Cash gifts and financial support for Vanessa's fashion ventures, $12,000. He closed the folder. Total, $364,200, give or take. The silence was deafening. Aunt Eleanor stepped forward. For context, everyone, that's more than most people make in 7 years of full-time work. Myra did this while completing her medical residency and raising infant twins, alone. She offered, Mom's voice cracked. We never forced her. No one said you forced her, Grandpa replied. But I am curious. In 8 years of receiving this support, how many times did you say thank you? No answer. How many times did you visit her in the hospital after her twins were born? Still nothing. How many times did you show up for her? My mother started crying. Not the delicate, sympathetic tears from earlier, real ugly sobs. We thought she was fine, Dad said, his voice hollow. She never complained, she always managed. She managed, Grandpa repeated. Because she had to. Because you taught her that her needs didn't matter. An uncle near the back shook his head. Jesus, Richard. $360,000, and you called her a burden? Dad flinched like he'd been struck, but Grandpa wasn't finished. There's one more thing the family should hear, Grandpa said. He pulled out his phone, adjusting his reading glasses. 2 months ago, Myra was in a car accident, a serious one. She was bleeding internally and being rushed to emergency surgery. From the ambulance, she called her parents. Her children were home with a babysitter who was about to leave. She needed someone to watch them for a few hours. He paused, looking directly at my parents. This is the text message she received in response. From Helen. I'll read it exactly. He cleared his throat. Myra, you've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets with Vanessa tonight. Figure it out yourself. The room erupted. Oh my God, someone breathed. That's not... You're taking it out of context, Vanessa said desperately. There is no context, Aunt Eleanor snapped, that makes abandoning your daughter during a medical emergency acceptable. We didn't know it was serious, Dad shouted. Did you ask? Grandpa's voice cut through the chaos. Did you call her back? Did you come to the hospital? Silence. The answer, for those wondering, is no, no, and no. A woman I recognized as a distant cousin stepped away from my parents, her face twisted with disgust. Several others followed. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably now. I didn't mean it like that. I was frustrated. I didn't think... You didn't think your daughter might die, Grandpa finished, because you never thought about her at all. He turned to face the room. I'm not asking anyone to pass judgment. I'm simply presenting facts. What you do with them is your own choice. He looked at me, finally, his eyes soft. Myra, is there anything you'd like to say? I hadn't planned to speak. I'd come here expecting Grandpa to handle everything, to let the facts speak for themselves while I stood silently in vindication. But looking around the room, at my crying mother, my shell-shocked father, my sister's crumbling facade, I realized I had something to say after all. I handed Lucas to Aunt Eleanor and stepped forward. I didn't come here for revenge. My voice was steadier than I expected. I came here because Grandpa invited me, and because for 34 years, I've been living with a version of my family that wasn't real. A version where I was the strong one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need anything. I looked at my parents. I believed you. When you said Vanessa needed more support because her industry was harder, when you said I could handle things on my own, I believed you, and I tried to be what you needed me to be. A tear slid down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. But that night in the ambulance, bleeding and terrified, I finally understood. I wasn't strong to you. I was convenient. I wasn't reliable. I was exploitable. And no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough to make you see me the way you see her. Several family members had moved closer to me. An aunt touched my arm. A cousin nodded with tears in his eyes. My father started to speak. Myra, I'm not finished. He stopped. I don't hate you, I said quietly. But I can't keep pretending this is okay. I can't keep buying love that should have been free. An uncle across the room turned to my father. How could you, Richard? This whole time, you've been living off your daughter while treating her like nothing. The room was turning. I could feel it. So what now? Dad's voice was desperate. You've humiliated us in front of the whole family. Are you happy? I shook my head slowly. I'm not happy, Dad. None of this makes me happy. I took a breath. But I'm also not sorry. Because this isn't about humiliation. It's about honesty. For the first time in 8 years, our family knows the truth. Not your version, not Vanessa's spin, the truth. Vanessa tried once more. This is ridiculous. You're acting like we're monsters. We're your family. Families help each other. You're right. I turned to face her. Families do help each other. So where were you when I was pregnant and alone? Where were you when I was raising newborns while studying for boards? Where were you when I was bleeding out in an ambulance? She had no answer. I looked back at my parents. From now on, I won't be sending money. Not because I can't afford it, but because financial support should be a gift, not an obligation. And it should flow both ways in a family that actually cares about each other. My mother reached toward me. Myra, please. I'm also not cutting you off forever, I continued. But I need space, real space, not a few weeks of guilt-tripping followed by everything going back to normal. I need you to actually think about what you've done. And if someday you can acknowledge it, really acknowledge it, maybe we can rebuild something. I took Lucas back from Aunt Eleanor. But I won't hold my breath. A great aunt approached me, taking my hands in her weathered ones. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, I had no idea. All these years I thought you were the one who had it easy. I know, I said softly. Everyone did. That's how it was supposed to look. All right. I want to check in with you again. That moment when I finally said those words, when I chose myself for the first time, did it resonate with you? I know so many of us have been taught that family means sacrifice, no matter what. But here's the thing. Boundaries aren't betrayal. Saying no isn't selfish. Type boundaries in the comments if you agree. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it with them. Now, let's see what happened in the aftermath. My parents left the party early. No one stopped them. No one said goodbye. Dad helped Mom to the car while she sobbed into his shoulder. Vanessa followed with her head down, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. The silence they left behind was heavy, but not uncomfortable, more like the quiet after a storm passes. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives. Cousins I'd barely spoken to in years reached out to apologize. Aunts and uncles who'd always believed my parents' narrative of the perfect family were reevaluating everything. "I always thought you were the difficult one," Cousin Rachel texted me. "Vanessa made it sound like you pulled away for no reason. I'm so sorry I believed her." The family group chat, the one where I'd received that devastating message, went silent. Then it was deleted entirely. More significantly, my parents found themselves quietly excluded from family gatherings. When my cousin Michael had his 40th birthday 3 weeks later, they weren't invited. When Aunt Eleanor hosted Easter brunch, their names weren't on the list. No one made a formal announcement. No one declared sides. They simply stopped being welcome. My mother called me from a new number 2 weeks after the party. I let it go to voicemail. "Myra, please, we need to talk. This has all been blown out of proportion. Your father is devastated. I'm devastated. Can't we just move past this?" I listened to it once, then I deleted it. Forgiveness wasn't a reset button. I knew that now. It was a release, for me, not for them. And I wasn't ready to release anything yet. But the financial consequences? Those were just beginning. 3 months after the party, I got a call from Aunt Eleanor. "They're selling the house." I set down my coffee cup. "What?" "Your parents. They put the house on the market last week. Word is they couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments." I should have felt something. Satisfaction. Vindication. Maybe even guilt. Instead, I just felt tired. "Where will they go?" "Your Uncle Frank is letting them stay in his guest house temporarily." Eleanor paused. "He made it very clear it's conditional. They need to get jobs, real jobs, not just waiting for someone else to bail them out." Jobs. My parents hadn't worked full-time in years. Dad took early retirement at 55. Mom had never worked outside the home. They'd been living off my money, and they hadn't even realized how dependent they'd become. "What about Vanessa? Can't she help?" Eleanor laughed. It wasn't kind. "Vanessa's been drowning since her divorce. Word got out about the party. Someone in the family knows someone in fashion. She lost a major design contract. Last I heard, she's waitressing part-time." I stared out my kitchen window at Lily and Lucas playing in the backyard. "I don't want them to suffer," I said quietly. "I know you don't, sweetheart. That's because you're a good person." Eleanor's voice softened. "But they didn't suffer for 8 years because you were supporting them. They didn't grow. They didn't learn. You stopping wasn't cruel. It was necessary." She was right. I knew she was right. That evening, I sat down with my new budget. The $3,200 I used to send my parents every month now went into a college fund for the twins. They'd never worry about student loans. They'd never carry someone else's burden the way I had. That felt like justice enough. The call came on a Tuesday night, 6 months after Grandpa's party. I was putting the twins to bed when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. "Myra?" Vanessa's voice was different, smaller. The polished confidence that had always defined her was gone. "Vanessa." "Please don't hang up." She took a shaky breath. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to say something." I sat down on the edge of my bed. "I'm listening." "I'm sorry." The words came out cracked. "I'm so sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you. For the things I said. For laughing at that text message when you were—" Her voice broke. "When you were dying, I laughed. What kind of person does that?" I waited. "I didn't know," she continued. "About the money. Not all of it. I knew Mom and Dad were struggling, but I thought they were managing. I didn't realize it was you. For 8 years, Myra. How did I not know?" "Did you ever ask?" Silence. "No," she whispered. "I didn't. Because I didn't want to know. I liked being the favorite. I liked that everything came easy for me." She laughed bitterly. "Nothing's easy anymore." I heard about the contract. "Yeah. Turns out your reputation matters in this industry." Funny how that works. We sat in silence for a moment. I'm not asking for money, she finally said, or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What I was, what Mom and Dad did. I see all of it. I took a deep breath. Then start from there. Stand on your own feet. Be better. Yeah. Her voice was thick with tears. I'm trying. Good. I hung up. And for the first time, I felt something like hope. 6 months after that call, 1 year after the accident that changed everything, I stood in my new apartment watching the sun set through the windows. It wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen. But it was 5 minutes from the hospital in a good school district. And most importantly, it was mine. No mortgage payments to parents who didn't appreciate them. No insurance premiums for people who called me a burden. Just rent, utilities, and a college fund growing steadily every month. Lily and Lucas were at Grandpa Thomas's house for the afternoon. He'd become a fixture in our lives over the past year. Every Sunday, he'd pick them up for adventures, the zoo, the park, ice cream that I pretended not to know about. They're good kids, he told me once. You're raising them right. From him, that meant everything. Aunt Eleanor had become more than family. She was a friend. We had dinner together twice a month. She'd helped me navigate the emotional aftermath of the party, of setting boundaries, of learning to prioritize myself. You know what I admire about you? She said recently. You didn't become bitter. A lot of people would have. You had every right to. What would be the point? I'd replied. Bitterness is just drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick. As for my parents, we hadn't spoken directly. But I knew from family whispers that they were still at Uncle Frank's. Dad had gotten a part-time job at a hardware store. Mom was doing bookkeeping for a local church. They weren't thriving, but they were surviving. Some days I wondered if they thought about me, if they missed me, if they regretted anything. But those weren't my questions to answer. I'd spent 34 years carrying their weight. It was finally time to put it down. If you've made it this far, I want to leave you with something. Not advice. I'm not qualified to tell anyone how to live their life, but maybe a reflection. A lesson I learned the hard way. For 34 years, I believed that love was something you could earn. That if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, asked for nothing in return, eventually the people who were supposed to love me would see my value. I was wrong. Love isn't a transaction. It's not a reward for being useful. And no amount of money, time, or energy can buy something that should have been freely given from the start. The family I have now, Grandpa Thomas, Aunt Eleanor, friends like Marcus who showed up when my own parents wouldn't. They didn't love me because of what I could provide. They loved me because of who I am. That's the difference. And it took almost dying on an operating table to understand it. I don't know what happens next with my parents. Maybe someday they'll truly change. Maybe they'll reach out with genuine remorse, ready to rebuild something real. If that happens, I'll consider it. But I won't wait for it. I won't shape my life around the hope of something that may never come. My life is mine now. My energy, my resources, my love. And if the people who raised you call your self-respect betrayal, then maybe they never deserved your loyalty in the first place. To anyone out there carrying a weight that was never yours to bear, it's okay to put it down. It's okay to choose yourself. You're not selfish. You're not ungrateful. You're not a burden. You're finally free. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. It means the world to me. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a boundary with family? How did it change your life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, stories about standing up for yourself and finding your voice, check out the video in the description. I think you'll love it. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.